In this tutorial, we're going to fold the hybrid rhombus twist. This is a closed open hybrid rhombus twist. So if you're familiar with closed and open triangles, you can see the outlines of those twists in here. And it's pretty similar to the closed open hybrid square twist, except that with the rhombus, we already had one direction going straight through and the other direction one spacing offset. So it's a slightly different setup to get this rhombus twist. Now, this tutorial is part of the Summer of Twists series. So if you're not familiar with triangle twists or rhombus twists yet, I do recommend going to the beginning of the series. I'll have the playlist down in the description. And you can also sign up for reminders of weekly reminders working through the series as a whole at training.gatheringfolds.com/summer, where you can also get an ebook that has crease patterns for 60 different tessellations, 2 for each of the 30 twists taught in Summer of Twists. So let's dive into the folding. We're going to look at how to fold this. I'm not going to pre-crease anything. And then we'll look at the crease pattern from the front and back. And I'll link to a longer tutorial where you can use this twist in the context of a repeating pattern at the end. So for this one, I want to mark the center, and I'm using an 8-fold triangle grid on a square. So if you're not familiar with this grid, definitely check out the Summer of Twists welcome video. And I've got my edge parallel grid directions aligned vertically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line through the center on the edge parallel grid direction. And I'm using red for mountain folds. Valley folds will be blue. And, excuse me, I'm going to draw, so one grid spacing above the center, I'll draw a mountain down and to the right. And one grid spacing below the center, so this will be 2 grid spacings apart for these 2 folds. I will draw a line up and to the left. So this is matching what we see in this folded example, where we have one mountain going all the way through on the same grid line, and then these 2 mountains 2 spaces apart. So instead of looking at it from, okay, here's where all of my folds are going to end up in the end, we're looking at how do these pleats line up with each other? Where do they meet? How far apart are they on the grid? Which is what you'll actually see when folding larger patterns. Then my valley folds are going to be above each pleat as it extends to the right. So if I orient each mountain fold to the right, the valley fold will be above it. And so returning to my original orientation, I'm going to pick up all of these mountain folds and lay them down over the valleys. You'll notice this won't squash directly. And we have the same thing on both sides. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this lower right-hand side, and I really need this pleat and this pleat to be laying down flat. This one kind of holds things in place, and I'm going to press just this one intersection so that I have mountain folds going diagonally across the grid to the next grid intersections. I'm going to use my bone folder here to get those nice and smooth. And then I'm going to use my bone folder to do a little bit of pre-creasing. There's just this one bit that works better if you score it with a bone folder or other folding tool. And that's completing this triangle. So this triangle is going to be completed with a valley fold from one corner to the next. And this doesn't have to be super precise. It's just telling the paper that, yeah, I'm going to fold pretty much in there. And now, when I bring up my remaining pleats, when I start pressing them down, I can see this open triangle setup that we saw in the open triangle twist video. And then I can squash that open triangle like normal. I'm just being a little careful at this corner where these two triangles are coming together, because that's a very small angle between the folds. So I call this the fat hybrid rhombus because there's another way to do a hybrid rhombus twist, which is to shift the pleat that goes through on the same grid line and have that offset, and have the diagonals be back to single spacing offset instead of the double spacing offset like we saw here. And that's something that will show up in the longer tutorial if you choose to partake in that. So opening up, we see a very similar pattern in the hybrid rhombus as we saw in the hybrid square twist, the closed open hybrid square, which is that we have new mountain folds for these triangular shapes coming from the two ends, and one of them, the bigger one, is closed by a mountain. The smaller one is closed by a valley. And then there's this little leg of valley, which in this case happens to be on a grid line, that goes and closes the gap between those two triangles. So this is what the crease pattern looks like on this side of the paper. And you can see as I fold, this twist rotates around slightly. You see the rotation more on the closed triangle bit than the open triangle bit. And actually you can see this vertical line that we drew starts out vertical, then goes at this angle, then goes at a steeper angle, and then comes back to vertical as it passes through the twist. So that's a good indicator of how much it's twisting. Now, if we look at this twist from the opposite side, we see this 1x1 rhombus hole with this little notch in it. I actually don't know a way to fold a twist that has a 1x1 rhombus hole without a notch. So that is a puzzle that you can help me solve if you want to work on that. And on this side of the paper, all the mountains have turned to valleys, and the valleys have turned to mountains. So we have our central triangles now outlined in valleys. And the rest of our creases are in mountains. And you can see there's that really tiny angle, and it's even smaller than it looks right there because the actual fold line is there if I'm drawing precisely. So that's why I used my bone folder to emphasize that fold closing the closed portion, so we wouldn't get smearing of the paper as it goes to fold the final form. So that's the hybrid closed open rhombus twist fat version. And you can fold a pattern that has multiple repeats of this twist in that longer tutorial that I mentioned. And this twist also shows up in my Advanced Twist Techniques course, which you can find a link to in the description. So happy folding, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.